Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out and participating in our Winter 2023 FCI Live series. This is our last session of this series for this time around. We'll be back in May, but we're very excited to have with us today Ron Hance, the Executive Director of Network for Developing Conscious Communities. And he's going to be talking to us about the National Conference on the Black Co-op Agenda. This will be its second annual year, and he's going to tell us all about it, its goals, and what to expect. And with that, I am going to welcome Ron and turn it over to him.
Okay. Well, thank you, JQ, and again, thank you for allowing us this time and this space to share the work that we do. I just appreciate you and your outreach in terms of being able to share. I'm going to share some slides right now with you. Okay. All right. Well, as JQ has said, this is our second annual National Conference on Black Cooperative Agenda. Our theme this year is Advancing Black Cooperative Economies Through Liberatory Practices. We're hosting this conference in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Golden Nugget Hotel. So the conference will take place from June 1st to the 3rd. So we're expecting a robust audience of people in attendance. So let me, all right. So again, this conference is happening June 1st to the 3rd. It's a national gathering for Black people who are passionate about building and sustaining Black cooperatives. With more than 40 educational workshops, inspirational leadership discussions, and opportunities to connect with peers, this conference offers something for every cooperative of social good. The hosts for this conference are the Network for Developing Conscious Community, which is the organization I represent, and the Las Vegas Department of Human Services. It was soon invite from the Department of Human Services that we selected as the site this year, Las Vegas. And so we're working in partnership with the Department of Human Services in terms of framing out the sessions and bringing hopefully a wonderful convening to realization in Las Vegas. So it is a 3-day conference, again, that brings together Black cooperatives and cooperatives united by their passion for growing sustainable cooperative businesses. All right. So who should attend? Well, again, this is a 3-day learning experience and a growing opportunity for folks to engage in the work and of connecting with Black cooperatives from around the country. With senior leaders from across all cooperative industries and across all cooperative sizes. So we in our first conference that we had in 2022, we had people who represented various different types of cooperatives. Also, too, we had various different sizes. So it was a real good mixture of learning experiences that we had at the conference in 2022. And so we're looking forward to really escalating and elevating the work that we're doing in this year's conference. Again, the conference provides an opportunity to learn from a world-class program of business thought leaders and practitioners. And it offers high-level strategic thinking on the most critical management topics, such as leadership, talent, performance, and transformational work. And we hope to have folks leave with new ideas to help their cooperative organizations grow and expand. So why attend? Well, there's a need to build partnerships and collaborations and more connectivity among Black-led, Black-governed cooperatives. And so we see this conference as an opportunity for not only civic engagement, but to re-energize ourselves in in the space of building out the work that we need to do around building out and sustainable Black cooperatives. So there's an educational piece where we have 20 workshops with actionable takeaways led by cooperative industry experts. There's an inspirational piece where we engage in compelling leadership discussions, highlighting best practices in the economic and social impact space. And of course, connections, forming relationships, engaging in deep conversations of the sharing of ideas with fellow change makers. This is a unique cooperative because it doesn't focus on just one area of cooperative work. Some of you might be familiar with the Black Food and Justice Alliance and work in the food space. Some of you may work in the housing cooperative space, but this space is a space for all 5 types of cooperatives: retail, worker, producer, service, housing, where we bring together all these 5 areas of cooperative work to share in collective knowledge, collective sharing. So that's what makes this convening unique in itself, because it doesn't just focus on one area of cooperative work, it focuses on all 5 areas of cooperative work. Here's just a picture of the Wedge Community Food Cooperative that was in the 50s, that was housed in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So let me just take you down just a quick road in terms of just some historical significance of why this conference is important. In 1907, W.E.B. Du Bois held a conference on cooperatives and listed over 154 current African-American cooperatives. Du Bois spoke in favor of a wide range of cooperatives and alternative economic institutions. Cooperatives have remained a key institution in the toolbox of African-American social movements, where Washington, D.C. was a central location in terms of this social movement, thus creating a rich cooperative history. So here's a picture of Dr. Du Bois to share with you. So in the 1930s, the Young Negro Cooperative League was founded with a mission to gain economic power through cooperation. Although short-lived, this co-op inspired many other cooperative efforts and trained people who later became activists. For instance, Ella Baker was the league's national director, and she went on to help found SNCC, the Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee, one of the seminal groups of the civil rights movement in the mid-20th century. While cooperatives were a training ground for activists and leaders of the civil rights era, a particular success was the Freedom Quilting Bee, founded in 1967. Women from Southern sharecropper families joined to craft and sell quilts. They bought land and built a sewing factory, also selling land to families who had been evicted for civil rights activities. You know, back in the 60s, you know, still doing post Jim Crow, you know, when Black folks organized, it was retaliatory from many institutions to evoke political power on them. And so a lot of them had to go through alternative means to acquire property and to maintain themselves in the work that they were doing. But the Freedom Quilting Bee was a founding member of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which is still in existence today. The Federation was created to promote cooperative economic development as a strategy and philosophy to support and sustain Black farmers' ownership and control of land. So the Federation of Southern Cooperatives has been around for almost over 50 plus years. And it was started by one of the founders was Ella Baker. All right. So Ella Baker was frustrated by the political process, turned to economics as a strategy for greater racial equality. In 1968, she began a pig bank to provide free pigs for Black farmers to breed, raise, and slaughter. A year later, she launched the Freedom Farm Cooperative, buying up land that Blacks could own and farm collectively. From the assistance of donors, including former singer Harry Belafonte, she purchased 640 acres of land and launched a co-op store, boutique, and sewing enterprise. She single-handedly ensured that 200 units of low-income housing was built and still exists in Ruralville today. The FCC lasted until the 1970s as its heyday. It was among one of the largest employers in Sunflower County, Mississippi. Moving from the 30s to the 40s to the 60s and into the late 60s, there was a gentleman by the name of Cornelius Cornbread Givens, and he came out of the Poor People's Campaign that was launched by Dr. King in '68, that took place during the time that Dr. King was assassinated. And out of that campaign came the formation of the Poor People's Development Foundation, which Cornbread worked with Bernard Rustin and other community activists to start. The Poor People's Development Foundation sought to help poor communities develop cooperatives. They first worked with farmer cooperatives as tenant farmers in 1971, and these cooperatives had formed because in response to the Voting Rights Act of '65. So again, we see the work of cooperatives being engaged in a political landscape and an alternative landscape in terms of trying to augment the political discourse that was happening regarding blacks, and particularly Blacks engaged in economic development and social movements. Here's a photo of Cornbread Givens here at the food co-op, taken at a food co-op here in the District of Columbia. All right. So I just want to make note of some Black run cooperatives. Ujima Collective out of Pittsburgh, Cooperation Jackson out of Jackson, Mississippi, Detroit Food Co-op out of Detroit, Michigan, and Mandela Groceries, which is out in Oakland, California. So I just wanted to share this brief history of the movement around Black cooperatives, because this National Conference on Black Cooperative Agenda is part of a wider movement, a movement to create sustainable Black governed cooperatives that could connect in theory and in practice with each other to build out a robust ecosystem of economics, social enterprises, as well as to lift the consciousness of the Black community. So we'll be there in Las Vegas in June, and I'm hoping that many of you would join us, because I think you'll be in for a wonderful experience. Just as a sidebar, after last year's conference, we moved to put together a group of individuals to explore the possibility of building a Black-led movement around cooperatives. And so we've been working since last April to build out that movement. We had a convening in Pittsburgh in October, bringing together over 25 organizations to look at what it would take to augment and build out this sustainable organization that will be vested in building out the ecosystem for Black governed, Black-led cooperatives. And so we are still in the process of building on it, working on the incorporation. We do have a name. The name is the National Association of Black Cooperatives. And so we're working to bring this whole organization, new organization, to the forefront. As you can well imagine, for those of you who worked in the space of building our organization, it's really a labor of love and commitment to build out anything. And when you're building out something that's Black-led, it even takes on a whole different perspective in terms of your commitment, because you're fighting against so many odds in terms of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. So yeah. So I do want to share this too. I had this conversation with JQ. You know, while this is a Black organized, focused conference, it does leave room for white participation. And I say that because I think that one of the things that we seldom do is taking learned experiences and sharing in learned experiences. And so I would like to say to white led groups to see it in your preview to come to this conference, to come to listen, to hear the stories. And hopefully in hearing the stories, you can take that message of storytelling that you've heard back into your communities and sort of shift the thinking around the discourse that permeates this industry. You know, one of the things I have seen and not seen in my 20 plus years of working in the cooperative space is a unified collective where each group can work within their own framework, building their own intentionality, and yet find the opportunities to work together across racial lines, across economic lines. And so I like to see that be a part of this agenda for this particular conference, in terms of people coming together and working in solidarity, because that's what solidarity is about. It's about working in unison, and yet recognizing that we all have our own uniqueness and own priorities that we can work towards as well. So that's what I wanted to share this evening with you. And I like to open up the space for questions or comments, because I'm always open to listening and hearing different perspectives. So I would like to ask you to share your thoughts on this conference and why you may see yourself in attendance. So with that said, I'd like to open up the mic.
You've got a couple questions in the chat already, and if folks want to raise their hands also to unmute, that will also be fine. So please do let us know by using the little raise your hand function, or even just raising your hand actually, or you can put it in the chat. Tina wants to know, is there a website and registration and more? Is there a website with registration and more information that they can go to?
Yes. The website is being developed. Hopefully we're launching it on February 13th. And I did take some names in the chat, and I'll add you to our email list, and so that you'll be made aware of the opportunities when we finish developing it.
I did so if you didn't hear that earlier, please do go ahead and put your email in the chat if you would like to get follow-up information from Ron. So and I'm going to ask people to raise your hand or throw it in the chat. We've got a couple more here. I don't think we're going to have any problem for questions. Is there a large number of Black farm co-ops you're aware of, and are they making much progress?
Yes, there's a large number of Black who are working in the food industry, in the growing industry, and also now transitioning to the grocery industry. So we're seeing a heavy lift around food in the Black cooperative space.
Great. I'll throw one in the chat in a bit here for you guys. West Georgia Farmers Cooperative is a Black-led farmers co-op that is now building a grocery store. If you want one example, and I'll throw them in the chat.
In Gym City, in Dayton, Ohio,
yes.
as well as the Detroit Food Cooperative, which Malik Giuliani is building in Detroit.
That opens this fall, and
Yeah.
the North Flint Co-op Market hopes to open this summer. Also Black-led. Fertile Ground. Yeah, the only reason I mentioned West Georgia is because it actually is a farmer co-op of Black farmers who decided to also build a grocery store. So they're now building a grocery store. So it kind of combines them, which is really cool. There's a huge wave coming. In your experience, what are the most common challenges in building Black cooperatives, and what are some of the solutions that have worked?
Oh, goodness. I think one of the challenges is overcoming the thinking that we can't work together. I think that has permeated our history for too many years. And so the challenge for us is to learn and rethink how we can work together, and how we can build collective cooperative businesses and collective cooperative efforts around a unified, unison way that brings stability, sustainability back into our communities. What was the second part of the question?
So what are some of the solutions you've seen to those challenges?
Well, the solutions are this: you have to start somewhere. And so I think that some of the solutions are just beginning to manifest itself. I think this new generation of young Black leaders are saying things differently, are looking at things differently now. And so I'm encouraged by them in the work they do and how they approach the work. Much different than my generation. So I'm encouraged by the young generation in terms of their attitude and what they bring to the table in terms of just the consistency in which they operate. I'm really happy to see so many young folks, and so I think that one of the things I like to be able to do is just add to their growth. I'm sort of 2/3 along my life pendulum, and the next third of my life I like to see and devote to building, helping young folks build out the next paradigm of change makers and change agents.
Excellent. We have another one here. Will any of the successful co-ops that you just mentioned be presenting at the conference? There's two questions, so we'll start there.
Well, yes, we'll have Malik there. We have Ahmad there from Salisi from Gym City. We're having discussions on creating credit unions. We're having discussions on the cultural aspects of why we do this work that we do. There'll be a session on the political organizing, because I think one of the things I see as a challenge is trying to translate this work that we do in cooperative and align it with a political agenda. And in that space, we have to understand that nothing in this country manifests itself unless it manifests itself in a political way. And why we may not want to be engaged in politics, because it can be some kind of messy, we have to understand that policy drives everything. It drives resources. And so we have to really look at how we can now mobilize ourselves collectively to have a voice, to have a single voice in the work that we're doing, and so that we can change the policy direction of how we look at capitalism, how we look at solidarity economies, how we look at cooperatives. So I think that that this work is the new work that's going to have to take place and should be taking place in terms of echoing out the new paradigm.
There was another question. Will there be sessions on supporting urban gardening at the conference?
There'll be a session on vertical gardening, and we hope to have another session on urban gardening. And again, you know, the USDA is funding rural work, and that's important to fund the rural farmers. But it's also important to look at how do we fund the work of urban farmers and get them lifted up in accessing resources. And so again, I think that, you know, this is a part of the political discourse that we do have, that when you look at urban and looking at rural, is that the rural work has always been supported through the USDA, but the urban work has got little lift around elevating it in the space of growth and opportunities. And so I think that that's where the next work is going to need to take place in terms of being able to bring more attention and more resource into the space of urban farming.
All right, that's what came into the chat so far. If there are others who want to put something in the chat, or if you specifically have a question for Ron and you'd like to raise your hand to unmute, we can do that too. But
I like to hear their comments.
All right, let's throw it open.
Yeah,
I noticed I asked you to raise your hand so we don't all unmute at once.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that, okay, we've got one. Go ahead.
Me? Okay. So back in, I want to say maybe 2007 or 8 or 9, I'm sorry. The USDA had launched a program for beginning farmers. And I know that they were giving out funding for urban areas. I mean, because typically, just like Ron is saying, the funding would always go to the rural areas. One project that did receive that funding was Ohio State University, OSU Extension, and they were awarded, I want to say maybe $200,000 to establish this, this site within an area in the city of Cleveland called the Urban Agriculture Innovation Zone. Now, I don't know what happened with that program. I know that from that, then the, Lord, what is it? Natural Resource Conservation Services, which I think is under USDA, was administering a program to get the high tunnels to people who had applied for their commitment, because they don't call it a grant. And so I do know that that took place, but like I said, I don't know if anyone has any more information. I mean, because I've kind of been away from the whole urban ag actively for some years, but that is what I know. So I don't know if anybody has any more information about that, or if things, I'm sure things have changed, because that's the way, that's how things morph. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
I seen it's just put something in the chat. He just put something in the chat. Okay, Urban Innovation Program, and EQUIP. just received it last year. I don't know what Equip is. Ty, do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, greetings everyone. I'm Ty Simmons, Human Agriculture Cooperative, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Mrs. Scott was just talking about the UIP program, Urban Innovative Programs, which is still available through the USDA. And then the Equipped is USDA, well, FSA program that is giving out, giving funding for high tunnels. You purchase the high tunnel, you set it up, and then you send in your invoice to get reimbursed.
All right, what are high tunnels? If you can elaborate a little more on defining what high tunnels are.
Well, it's the outdoor greenhouse without the hard plastic. It's
okay.
It's the plastic covering greenhouse.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank
And
you.
I also say all of them, every state actually has another grant opportunity called LFPA, Local Food Purchasing Agreement, which is from the USDA, which is equipping every state with funding to assist socially disadvantaged farmers, to assist socially disadvantaged communities.
Okay. Yeah, we just been awarded a small grant from NCBA to provide some technical assistance to underserved farmers, and so we're in the process now of putting together 5 training sessions that will cover things such as financial management, business planning, accounting, legal governance, and I think the other one is marketing. So thank you, Ty, for sharing that information. Does anyone else? Anyone else here? Yeah. So why? Oh, go ahead.
I wasn't
Chef
sure. I
Cassandra?
wasn't, Chef, are you raising your hand or just
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was raising my hand. I'm very not Zoom savvy.
me too. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was wondering if Ron could talk a little bit about some things to specifically look out for. I'm in the startup phase, and I'm doing this in a neighborhood, in a community that my family has lived in since 1965. So we have a history here. We know a lot of the neighbors, a lot of intergenerational stuff. But in the startup phase, even with all the information on FCI, one of the things that we've learned is, okay, we really got to get the feasibility and the market study right. Pay attention to that. But specifically, are there things that with the Black cooperatives that we need to pay attention to up front that could help us in the long run, or give more attention, or resources to?
Well, I would certainly mirror what Jessica Nibbaum has said, author of Collective Carriage, is that education is the key. Education is the key. And so no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing, you have to continue to educate people around awareness of the cooperative movement and what it takes. So I would say to you, if you aren't connected to a group that's providing some work in terms of academy, to identify yourself with a local or a national group that's doing a co-op academy, and get your local stakeholders engaged in that whole process as well, because one of the things I see that's needed is just more knowledge and understanding about how to run a cooperative. Because when you starting a cooperative and you working with people that you may know, but you don't know in a business sense. You may know them in a personal way, but you don't know them in a business sense. And so it's important to build out the platform and the whereabouts where you get to really embed them in collective experience. I think that's so important. And to do that, it takes long-term commitment. And that's where the sustainability really comes into play. It takes a long-term process to understand how to run a cooperative, but also how to bring others along in the space. So Chef Cassandra, I would say that you can visit our website, JQ put it up there, www.ndccnetwork.org. Because we do a cooperative academy. We're starting our next spring cohort March the 2nd. So if you're interested, go to our website, put in an application, and come on board and share in the learning and the growing of how to really build your cooperative. Because there's no quick pro quo to building a cooperative. There's no quick pro quo to building. It takes time, it takes commitment to build a strong, robust cooperative ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. That was super helpful. And then with the conference, will you have a session to speak to? I've heard you speak about before and write about engaging, politically and local leaders. That's something that we're very weak on. Everybody in the neighborhood pretty much votes, but we don't know how to. Our city council is part-time. We live in a small town, so trying to chase them down if it's not a session is pretty tough. So do you have any recommendations for that, or can we get more info about that at the conference?
Well, I tell you, small town, large town, it's the chase is still the same.
Okay. So I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad.
No. The chase is still the same. We're always chasing politicians, and we're going to chase them until we actually get a formula down that really works for us. And that formula is unity.
Okay.
And so we are going to have a session on political mobilization, political organizing at the conference. Because we want to have some takeaways that people can take back home with them. And again, as I said earlier, this work doesn't happen by osmosis. It happens because it's intentional. We have to be just as intentional about getting resources as those who have resources that deny us. So we have to really work hard at it.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Do we have anyone else? I can see there's some good suggestions happening in the chat, Ron, but I think they're kind of pinging back and forth some possibilities.
Well, Brian just said something about connecting with the Poor People's Campaign in your state as well. And I tell you, we've reached out to the Poor People's Campaign, and hopefully we this work happens because you stay at it, you stay on it, you grow, and while you may miss the opportunity this year, you create an opportunity to embed it the next year, in the next months. And so we're working at trying to get the word out about this organization that we're vested in seeing birth. We're vested in bringing together Black folks to collectively work at building out the ecosystem for cooperatives. And when I say ecosystem, I'm talking about not only just the cooperatives themselves, but all the supporting networks and organizations that we needed to support cooperatives. We need to get more Black folks engaged in CDFIs. We need to get more Black folks engaged in cooperative developers, being able to have the expertise to go out and develop cooperatives with a cultural lens attached to it. Because our folks, you know, unfortunately, a lot of us, some of us have not been brought into the space of understanding what consciousness is. And so we have to be patient. We have to be patient and allow the process to unfold. And while the process is unfolding, we have to be able to grow with those that are ready to move. And so it's just a dual track that we have to be on. One is to be patient enough to allow those that don't know to learn. And then on another track, we have to be able to take those that do know and elevate the work that's needed to grow. So yeah.
Denise? And if you're just applauding or if you wanted to share something.
I was just applauding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any others with comments or questions?
Well, again, you know, I'm hopeful that that you can find time and to come, to bring, and to, not only just for you to come, but to bring others. And that's what the key is to making any conference successful, is when you can share it with others and expose others. And so you know, if there's anything that we can do to help you raise funds in your immediate community, reach out to us. We don't have a lot of capacity, but we do have some. And so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ron, could you tell us a little bit about the network for developing conscious communities, like just the background?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Well, it's now 8 years old. But it came about as a thought for me that, having worked in community development for over 25 years, I saw a lot of resources that came into Black communities through public resources. But what I didn't see was sustainability of those resources that continue to work. And so I asked myself the question, what was missing? And it was obvious to me that what was missing was a consciousness that was needed to carry on the work. And so I shifted my thinking from looking at bricks and mortars to looking at building conscious awareness around what it takes to really embed yourself in this work around community development. And so that's what I've been committed to do. That's been my life purpose now, is to elevate the consciousness around community development, whether it's dealing with cooperatives, whether it's dealing with the arts, whether it's dealing with health, whether it's dealing with affordable housing, is to elevate the consciousness that we need to have to grow the work that we need to do. And so in conscious work, you know, we understand that everybody is not there at the same space in the same time. And so you consciously, you allow for growth to take place. But in the same sense, you also know that you have to, once you've connected with those that are consciously in the space that you're at, then you got an opportunity to propel that group. And so that's where we're at. We're about connecting and building out the framework for those that do know the work, as well as laying the pathway for those who need to learn the work. Because those who need to learn the work are just as important as those who know the work. So yeah, so thank you for asking. And you know, it's been a really a wonderful experience for me to share in this work and to grow and meet so many thinkers. And when you connect with people and you realize that that you are united in a mindful way, it means so much more. It brings so much more to the table. So thank you for asking that.
Hi, Ron. This is Angela with the Little Africa Food Co-op.
Oh, Angela, hello.
Greetings, greetings. I came on late, but thank you for sharing. I just wanted to remind you for us to connect outside of here still, if we can, you know, and have that one-on-one. I'd love to do that.
Yes. Thank you, Angela. Thank you.
Oh, I did have a question. I don't know if you covered this, but in your ecosystem, how many co-ops are like food or grocery or land related in the network so far?
You know what? That is why we need an organization, because we don't know. We don't know how many food co-ops out there, how many retail out there, how many housing co-ops out. We don't know, because we've not housed the data. And so that's going to be a part of the work that we're going to be doing around building out this organization, is that turning our attention to really data collection. Yeah, that's the work that's really before us, because in order to move, we need to know who we're moving with and how we strategize around the movement. So yeah, so unfortunately, we know some, but a lot of co-ops are starting from grassroots and are connected to mainstream avenues of growth in terms of connecting with maybe FCI or in the city. They're just out there doing the legwork, and so we have to really do our duty and job in terms of just being able to reach those that we know, and then having a pathway for those that we aren't familiar with and aren't known to us, for them to find access to connecting with the larger ecosystem.
Okay. Yes, this is Deborah from Market 166. I included information in there about the climate, about the Inflation Reduction Act and infrastructure investment for jobs and everything, because that is money coming down from Congress that could possibly it's going to be a lot of grant money and money for economically deprived neighborhoods. And I feel that there's going to be a lot of that money can go to help some of the co-ops especially for housing and retail and services and things like that. So I feel like that is something that probably is overlooked, but it's a big package of money that's coming down, and they're educating the communities on how to take advantage of the money that's in that package. It was shared to me by Opal, and I really appreciate that, because I think that it's going to be something that can really help a lot of co-ops and other groups economically deprived. There's going to be money in there, and I just passed it along. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Deborah. My only response to that is that to be eligible for the government resources, that means that you got to be eligible in your preparations. It means that you got to have a SAMS number, you got to have a .gov number, and so if you're not understanding that you need to have those criteria met first of all, then you don't put yourself in the running for those resources. And that's why it's important to focus on capacity building. And so in capacity building, it means that to me that I may not have all the whereabouts to compete myself, but if I join with someone else and leverage my work with their work, maybe we have an opportunity to compete for those resources.
Mhm.
And so in that saying that yeah, those resources are out there. How many Black groups are eligible for them? I don't know. Because usually the white groups are already set up, and they're set up to go after those resources. They got their auditing done. They've done all their legwork, and so we have to really focus on how we build capacity in the Black community among Black groups, so that we can compete holistically for these resources that are coming to our community, as opposed to having others do the work for us, that we do the work ourselves.
Okay. Mhm.
It's usually about now that we wrap up. Was there any last questions or comments you wanted to share, Ron?
No, that I just wanted folks to consider coming to the conference. We're going to try to make it as affordable and accessible as we can. And if you're unable to come, maybe you know someone else that can come and bring the information back to you. But the key is to really show up in the space. Because I think that once you're there, you feel the energy, you feel the vibrancy of what we're trying to do, and that you really enlarge yourself by bringing back more to your community than you left with. So June 1st through the 3rd, Las Vegas, Nevada, at the Golden Nugget Hotel. Go to our website, www.ndccnetwork.org. Get tuned in, get connected. If you need assistance working with your local foundations or local philanthropic groups in terms of maybe writing some grant proposals to get you there, reach out to us. We can provide some of that capacity building. But yeah, we're trying to get as many Black folks there as we can.
We did have one question in the chat. How much is it going to cost?
Oh, right now, $225 for early registration and $300 for full registration. So early registration will run from February 13th to March 13th, and then from the 14th on up to, from the 14th of March to the 15th of May, it'll be $300.
Okay. Well, I want to thank again Ron for being here and sharing with us and all about the work that he's doing, and this conference is coming up. Again, if you want to make sure that Ron has your email address so you get information once registration goes live and the web page is up, please put your email in the chat. I'll be sharing that with Ron if you give us permission to do so by putting it in the chat. So I just real quickly wanted, this is the end of our FCI live series. Thank you so much for being here with us. And once again, the series was made possible by the USDA, National Cooperative Bank, National Cooperative Grocers, and CoBank. Thanks so much to them, but especially thanks to all of you for coming out and participating, and especially to all of you who have